What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BBQ Tips Podcast. I'm Christie Vanover, champion pitmaster, the girl behind one of America's top barbecue websites, GirlsCanGrill.com, and a contestant on Food Network's Barbecue Brawl. I'm here to bring you some quick barbecue tips to help you up your barbecue game. Before we get into today's podcast, I gotta tell you, the podcast was fully produced, ready to export, ready to upload, and then I got a package in the mail and I had to stop the presses, put everything on hold because I have to tell you guys about this because it just happened. My cookbook, Holiday Grilling, is now available on Amazon. I had the proof last week. Now, Amazon just rang my doorbell with my first copy, fully printed, beautiful. This is the soft cover. It's going to be available in hardcover soon. I'm just waiting for that proof, but you can order this now. It has 111 recipes ranging from appetizers, brunch, drinks, mains, sides, desserts. I mean, there's just so many things in here that you can cook on your barbecue or smoker, and I give you the instructions for how to cook it on any grill. Plus, if you want to cook a couple things in the oven, I tell you how to do that too. So if you want to do a little bit of grilling over the holidays, whether it's just a side dish or whether you want to do the whole spread on your grill, this cookbook is going to help you out. Whether it's Thanksgiving, whether it's Easter, or even Valentine's Day for your special someone, you can now pick this up on Amazon. Just in the search bar, type holiday grilling, and fortunately, it's one of the first things that comes up. I will also include a link in the show notes, so you'll be able to get your copy there. And when I launched it, Amazon even made it on sale for you guys. So right now you can get this, I think it's like $2 to $4 off or something. So pick up your copy. I would really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Also, this week in the mail, I got the samples of my brisket rub and my chicken rub. The pork rub is still in production, but these are going to be available for sale for the first time ever at the Jack. All of those boxes have been shipped to the Jack. I will be at the hardware store in Lynchburg, Tennessee. I will have my rubs there. You can taste them. I'll have some cookbooks there also. You guys can buy those. I'll sign them for you if you want me to. But they will have my brisket and my pork and my chicken. And then soon after that, they'll be available online for everybody to purchase. And if you have a barbecue store and you want to stock them in your store, just shoot me a DM and I'll be sure to take care of you. Okay, let's move on to the rest of today's podcast. This week's podcast is going to be different from any other that I've done before because I'm going to be doing a cooking demo for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Today, the recipe I'm going to be making is certified Angus beef pastrami dino ribs. The reason I want to show you this recipe is because this is what I will be cooking up on Barbecue Hill at the Jack Daniel's World Invitational. I've talked so much about that in the past 4 podcasts, but now I want to bring some food to you, some knowledge to you about making pastrami. Obviously, if you're listening to the audio portion of this podcast, you're not going to be able to see me actually make the recipe, but I'm going to do my best to describe everything for you guys verbally so that you can kind of picture it in your head. Or you can just head on over to YouTube and you can watch the whole video. So to start, when making pastrami, you've got to use pink curing salt. This is called pink curing salt number 1, Prague powder number 1. It has a couple of different names. It's basically a combination of table salt and sodium nitrite. Sodium nitrite is what gives pastrami that flavor and the pink color. The reason that it's pink is because on its own, this can actually be pretty toxic. You don't want to replace this with table salt, so they make it pink so that you know that this is the nitrite instead of regular table salt. Pink curing salt number 2, also called Prague powder number 2, is sodium nitrate. That's what you would use if you're going to make cured meats like salamis or pepperonis, those that are cured for longer periods of time where the meat actually gets hard. But for corned beef and pastrami, we are going to use pink curing salt number 1. Because pink curing salt can be toxic in high doses, it's really important that you use the right quantities. If you're going to be doing a dry brine with pink curing salt, don't use any more than 1 teaspoon per 5 pounds of meat. If you're going to be doing a wet brine, which is what we're going to be doing today, you can use 2 to 3 teaspoons per gallon of water, and that should be enough wet brine for 5 to 7 pounds of meat. So what I have here in a pot in front of me is a gallon of fresh water, and I'm adding to it a tablespoon of that pink curing salt number 1. I'm also going to add in a cup of kosher salt. It's really important that you use kosher salt, not table salt, because they weigh different, so you want to use that kosher salt. So I've got a whole cup in there. And then I'm going to use a half a cup of brown sugar. I personally like dark brown sugar. I like the molasses I get out of that. So you're going to add that, which is going to help add a little bit of sweetness and color. And then for that familiar pastrami flavor, you're going to use a 1/4 cup of pickling spice. I like to make my own pickling spice. I have a full recipe at GirlsCanGrill.com, but you can also buy pickling spice that's already made at your grocery store or online. Once you have all of that together in a pot, you're going to want to set that on the stove so that you can melt and dissolve the sugars and the salts. And then you're going to need to fully let it cool down before you brine your beef. For the beef, this is a rack of plate ribs. You can see it's got 3 bones in it. It's just beautiful marbled meat that comes from the belly of the cow. I like using certified Angus beef because they have 10 standards that all of their beef has to meet, related to marbling, color, the cow size, so many things that make it consistent so that every time you're going to be cooking certified Angus beef, you know you're getting the same quality over and over again. When it comes to trimming these, there's not a lot you have to do. I leave the silver skin on the bottom because we're not going to be eating them like a pork rib. But there is some silver skin sometimes on the top. So I will take my knife and just go right underneath that and just get a nice thin layer of that silver skin off the top. If you have a hard time finding beef plate ribs, a lot of times you can buy them online. But what I recommend that you do is just talk to your local butcher at your grocery store who carries certified Angus beef and ask him for cut 123A. That's 123A. That is the official butcher's cut for this cut of beef. And if you give them that information, they should be able to special order it for you. A lot of times they will have other types of beef ribs available at the market, and I actually have a whole YouTube video on the different types of beef ribs. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But a lot of times they will get their beef ribs already trimmed, and so they may have the Korean style, which is when they take the rack of ribs and they cut it so it's got 3 skinny bones. It's only like 1/4 of an inch thick. Or sometimes they will do what's called English cut beef ribs. Again, it's from the same part of the cow, but they are just cut so that they're like 2 inches long, and then they're like single bones, so you can smoke those. Those are really good if you want to do like braised short ribs. That's usually what's used for that cut. But these are the full 3 bone rack that are just really sexy. So once that silver skin and kind of excess fat is removed from the top, you're going to want to place it in a brining bag. I just use these oven bags that Reynolds makes. They're usually for turkey, but they work great for this. You're just gonna open it up and place the ribs right inside. And then what I like to do, just to be on the safe side, is I set this bag right inside of an aluminum half pan, and I actually like to flip it upside down so the bones are on top. Then once that brine is cool enough, I'm gonna pour it into this bag, and with the meat on the bottom, the brine is really gonna work to flavor that meat beautifully. Once I make my brine, I like to store it in a gallon-sized pitcher and then just leave it in the refrigerator. You can do that several days in advance, and that way when you're ready to make your pastrami ribs, it's already cooled down and ready for you. So now that I have this, I'm gonna add this all to the bag. You just want to make sure that the ribs are fully covered. If you don't use all the brine, that's perfectly fine. You can save it for something else. You can basically make pastrami out of anything with this brine. Okay, now with this bag, you want to basically press out all of the air that you can so that there's just basically liquid in here. I like to give it a little twist and then tie it in a knot. Then I just make sure that the bag is fully in this pan. That way, if there's a leak at all, it's not going to leak into my refrigerator. This now is ready to go into the fridge for 5 days. When I'm making pastrami out of beef, I like to keep it in the refrigerator for usually about 5 days. If I'm doing something lighter like pork or chicken, I'll cut that time significantly. But we've got beef plate ribs here, so they're going to go in the fridge for 5 days. I'll see you guys in a week. Okay, these pastrami beef ribs have been in the refrigerator in the brine for 5 days. I just took them out of the fridge and I rinsed them under cold water to wash off that extra salt. Now it is time to rub them down. This is my homemade pastrami rub. It has some black pepper, coriander seeds, and some mustard seeds. I toast those up first and then I grind them, and then it's got a little bit of sugar, some paprika, and some garlic. I do not add salt to my pastrami rub. Because there's already so much salt in the brine, there's no need to add any additional salt to this meat. This is just going to help create that authentic pastrami flavor, as well as a beautiful crust. So I'm just sprinkling this all over the top of these certified Angus beef ribs. And then what we're gonna do is have one more brine process. We're actually gonna put this back in the refrigerator for one more day, and that's gonna help these flavors really penetrate into the meat, so it'll be ready for us to smoke it. So stay tuned, I'm gonna head to the fridge. I'll be back tomorrow with the update when we fire up the smoker. Okay, now that the pastrami beef ribs have been in the fridge for one more day to dry brine, it's time to take them out to the smoker. I like to cook these at a temperature of 250 degrees. I use cowboy charcoal, sometimes I use lumps, sometimes I use hardwood briquettes. Today I'm going to be smoking this on the Masterbuilt XT. It's a gravity series grill. What I like about this is that you just add the coals and then set the temperature digitally and it controls everything for you. So let's take this on out to the smoker. You're going to want to smoke this over indirect heat. On the Masterbuilt, I like to place it on the second shelf. That way it's a little bit elevated from the heat. And then every hour or so, I spritz it with apple cider vinegar. I like using vinegar instead of water because I like the acidity. Because the meat is so fatty, it really counterbalances it nicely and gives it a nice overall flavor profile. Now, a big rack of beef ribs weighs several pounds, so it's gonna take you 5 to 6 hours to get a good smoke on this and for the meat to be cooked through and tender. I like to smoke it to an internal temperature of about 200 to 205 degrees. I personally don't usually wrap my beef ribs when I smoke them. They've got so much fat in them, they just really don't need that extra moisture and that wrap. But if you do want to speed up the cooking, then you can wrap them and maybe shave like 30 to 45 minutes off of the cook time. But generally it does take me about 5 to 6 hours. When I take the ribs off the smoker, at that point I do like to wrap them in butcher paper and also plastic wrap and then put them in the cooler, and that just lets them kind of rest and settle so the juices kind of stay in the meat instead of ending up on your cutting board when you slice into them. So this has been resting for a while. You know, I like to let it rest for an hour or two. Now it's time for the reveal. These are some mighty fine looking beef ribs. Check that out. But what's going to make these unique is that they are pastrami. So you guys ready to slice into these? When I slice large pieces of meat, I like to use a long serrated knife. This is a Cutco 9 3/4 inch slicer. It works perfect for these. You're just going to want to slice right in between the bones. And remember, they're going to look a little bit different because these are pastrami ribs. I'm going to take a peek. Oh, yes. That is beautiful. Do you see that glorious pink? I can smell the pastrami. It smells so good. Oh man, just look at that. Beautiful, glorious pink. Totally digging it. All right, let's get into the other two bones, which is gonna give us this huge centerpiece. Oh my gosh. I feel really bad for those of you who are not watching this on YouTube. Like, if you're listening to the podcast, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you so much. But if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, you are seeing these glorious beef ribs, pastrami beef ribs. Incredible. Okay. Now remember, one of the main reasons that I'm doing this cook for this week's podcast is to talk to you about what I am making on BBQ Hill. So this is going to be my dish. Now obviously we can't give every single person their own beef rib, as much as people would love that, but that would be a really rich bite. So instead, we are going to cut the meat off of the bone, and then we will end up with these beautiful slices of pastrami. I like to just cut it into little squares, little shingles, maybe like a 1/4 inch thick. You can see how tender this is. Oh my God, it's just magical, you guys. Certified Angus beef ribs are delicious. And when you pastrami them, they are even better. Okay, let's go ahead and build this dish. So I have a shingle of this nice pastrami beef rib. I'm gonna add just a few pickled onions right on top. Then I'm gonna hit it with this mustard sauce. This is a homemade brown butter honey mustard sauce. It's really beautiful. It's sweet, but also has a little bit of heat and nuttiness from the brown butter. We'll just add a little bit of that on top. I'm also gonna add a couple dill pickle chips right inside there. That's it. This is the dish that we're gonna be serving on BBQ Hill at the Jack. Let's get in there and take a bite. So beautiful. The beef is truly the star here. I love the sweet vinegariness I'm getting from the mustard. It complements the pastrami flavor so well. And then you get a little bit of texture and crunch from those sweet pickled onions, along with that beautiful pastrami bark that we put on these ribs. And if you want even more crunch, go in there and get you a dill pickle chip. For those of you who are going to be at the Jack, please come up to Barbecue Hill because I would love to give you this beautiful barbecue bite of certified Angus beef pastrami smoked beef ribs. For those of you who won't be at the Jack, I'm sorry, but don't worry, I've got you taken care of too. I'm going to post this full recipe on my website so that you can make these at home yourself. They're really not that hard. They just take a few little special ingredients like that pink curing salt #1 that I talked about earlier on in the show, plus that pickling spice. You can either make it yourself or just buy it in the store. And then it just takes a little bit of time. That whole wet brine process for about 5 days, a dry brine for 1 more day, and then smoking them up for about 6 hours. Let me know what you thought of this format. Let me know if you like seeing more visuals tied in with my podcast. Maybe I'll start doing that more in the future. I know for those of you who are listening on audio, maybe that doesn't make much sense. So I just want to hear your feedback. Let me know. Do you like this? Do you want more recipes? Should I just do recipe videos and keep the podcast totally separate? You know, I'm flexible because I'm here for you. I just want to share great barbecue tips. Speaking of which, you can find thousands of barbecue tips at GirlsCanGrill.com, plus hundreds of barbecue recipes, and you can follow me on all of the socials at GirlsCanGrill. Until next time, guys, happy grilling.